Welcome to Dusty Little Wastelanders, written by L.L. Smith, narrated by L.L. Smith. Chapter 9, Athena, Party of Four. The morning sun was cutting through my eyelids, prying them open faster than I could want. The auction was at noon. I tossed over on the floor, moving my gaze against the quilt that draped off the bed, or, more importantly, away from the sun. The 2 days leading up to the auction were gone in a wink. We'd chosen to lay low and live easy for as long as we could, let the stress eat us alive on the day of the auction, but not 1 second before. K2 and I cleaned the bar thoroughly both days. Esther kept us busy with plenty of work, but best of all was the camaraderie that grew between K2 and me. We got to know each other on a great deal better over the bathroom scrubs and floor moppings. Neither of us shied from work, which is our first bonding point. Being fellow wastelanders felt second. We couldn't be more opposite each other, but we got along like singing and dancing. K2 was the friendly, shy type, while I was the gruff, in-your-face type. I'd finally found the fulfillment of having a friend. Not a tag-along, not a child to look after, not family, but a normal friend. Donald and Monica practically spent the whole 48 hours together. They came and went through the bar from time to time just to check in, I'd reckon. Monica had a place on the opposite side of the street, and Donald squatted there both nights. I imagine he did a tad bit more than squat. I feel like I should be happy for Donald. I didn't even know Monica, but I sure felt like I hated her. I wasn't sure how much of our situation Donald had confessed to her over their romantic nights, but I'd rather he didn't tell her a damn thing. These situations were incredibly sensitive for me, and I had no interest in letting some strange woman in my life's tragedies. I couldn't tell if my irritations were obvious in my speech when talking to Monica. Kyle always teased that I was no good at hiding my feelings. I wondered if those blatant feelings is what kept them away. TM and Esther got thicker than a good batch of peanut butter on those couple days. Esther was great with kids, made me wonder if he ever had any of his own. He was so much better at communicating with TM, made me look like the one with a speech problem. Those two did more clowning than a circus. I had to crack down on Esther to make sure he kept TM working for his keep. I was starting to feel more like TM's parent. Then again, I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to be to TM. The night before the auction was finally upon us. TJ stayed in the bar that night so that we might spend the morning strategizing together. He seemed a little bit off the night when he strolled in. I figured the nerves had consumed him, but he showed up. That was more than Donald and Esther and I had expected out of him. All the pieces were finally in place. Our plan was in effect. The auction was at noon. I had no way of telling time, but I figured I'd just follow the crowd that rolled in. Most Wastelanders had no concept of time, just another divide between us and the city folk. I bet Esther had spent some days as a Wastelander. It hadn't taken me long to notice Esther's lack of clocks or calendars. The way he admired K2 and me made me felt perhaps he still longed for that life. I could feel it in his eyes when he fixed his gaze on us for extended times. I sometimes weighed his options to see which seemed more appealing to me. Owning a successful bar seemed like a good life, even if that bar was in a shitty town. But I didn't mind wastelanding. Would I miss it? It was hard to say since wastelanding is all I've known for so long. I wondered which Kyle would prefer. I'd have to ask him once I got him back. It hadn't hit me yet that today could be the day I reunited with Kyle. I reckoned it wouldn't until I was face to face with him. I believe it had only been 7 days since his capture. It felt longer. Such should be expected when you lose someone who's been in your life since your earliest memory. Today that 7 days would come to a close. I developed a newfound determination to never be separated again. It was that desire that steered my feet through this, yet here I was hours away from seeing him and I couldn't accept that happening. I got up from the floor ready to start the morning. My back popped out, my neck stuck in place, and my shoulders were numb. The luxury of my sleeping bag had worn out after the second night. Getting vertical from this stiff floor was becoming my biggest chore. I stretched out my morning jitters before greeting my posse downstairs. The bedroom door blasted open and Donald came rushing through.
"Enry, there's a major problem,"
he announced. His worry even woke TM. What is it? I asked, trying to resist my overbearing anxiety.
"Olivia's connection dropped the ball on our passes," Donald explained.
Damn it, I scolded. They were probably too busy smoking their brains out to realize the situation.
"We should have checked up on them last night like I suggested," Donald scolded.
He wasn't wrong. Well, shit, I huffed. I guess let's see if Esther has any ideas on how to get a pass. I shoved past Donald and went down the bar. Esther read my book of a face. The title was Pissed Off Already. What's wrong? Esther asked. TJ forgot to get us a pass at the auction. I continued to spout anger. Forgot? Esther asked. Or his unreliable connection lived up to their expectation. Do you know where I can get a pass? I asked. Although they probably wouldn't sell them to an unregistered citizen. I buried my hands in stress.
Nor am I, so I can't help you there.
You're unregistered? I popped up my face from my hand shelter.
Hell no,
Esther was offended.
I may no longer live a traditional Wastelander life, but I never registered.
How do you make it here in Hillville without being a registered citizen? I asked.
I was running this bar before registration was mandated. Because I serve a lot of Killville's elite, they pulled some strings and allowed me to stay one of the few citizens grandfathered in. Donald came jogging over. Esther. He panted from his brisk jog in stress, I suppose. Do you know where to buy a pass? Yes, Esther answered. But they don't sell passes the morning of. More good news. Plus, with your current plan, you need 5 passes, which I doubt you could afford. They're $60 per pass. We need into that auction, I demanded. TJ and TM joined me at the bar. My commotion was causing a scene. The patrons were beginning to get worried. I always aim to keep people's dining experience undisturbed, but my fury broke that goal. Have we found a way to get the passes yet? TJ asked. Have you? I smarted off. We can't get in without one, TJ said, and my connection failed to produce them. Thanks for the reminder. We definitely hadn't already figured that out, I continued. I think TJ wanted to cry. All right, you need to cool it, Enry, Esther demanded, handing me a glass of water. I've got an idea. Esther stepped out from the bar and walked to the exit. He turned at the exit and faced a sea of tables and those who were seated within them. It was a decent crowd this morning. The auction had brought in some new faces. Esther had 10 tables full, double a regular opening. He'd gotten their attention rather easily. I assumed this wasn't a regular occurrence. My butt clung to my chair with my cheeks 3/4 away from the seat. He had my attention, too. Hey, Esther called out to the crowd. Their attention snapped at him. I've got a year's worth of free drinks for the first person up here willing to let me borrow their private auction pass for an hour. An elderly woman was the first to her feet. Either the other patrons didn't care to lend their pass, or they respected Grandma's tenacity. She shuffled her way up to Esther. She spoke to him for a few seconds before handing over a slip of paper. It had to be her auction pass. They nodded heads, exchanged grins, and concluded their business. Esther began to work his way back over to us. He swung back behind the bar and slapped the pass onto the bar. It was just a standard sheet of paper, shaved slim with 5 signatures on it. That was Madame Athena, Esther told us. She wagered that I could keep the pass for 2 years of free drinks, which I agreed to. Thank you so much, I said, sliding back onto my seat. Hey, watch it, Esther corrected. Right, I said. He really hates thank yous. Won't happen again. Anyway, she said that if you're looking to sneak into the auction that you should know that there's a guest list, a list which none of us would be on. Athena told me she usually sends people to do her bidding for her and pays in advance for it. This year she hadn't found anyone and decided to go herself, until my wonderful offer that was, Esther continued. We should be able to present a pass and announce Athena party of 4 and be allowed in without question. That, of course, will leave us 1 man short. We weren't out of the fire yet. But I have a plan for that. Esther turned his grin to TM. We have a master artist in our midst, he announced. Young Master TM, we need your brilliant penmanship to forge these signatures. Can you do that for us? TM's head was rocking vertically. The Master TM has spoken, Esther turned to us with a grin. So, TM will make 5 total passes just in case, but the real pass will go to the one who plans to enter the auction not as part of Athena's group. I'll enter solo, I volunteered. No way, Donald interjected. It has to be me. I'm the only registered citizen here. Given Hillville's tight regulations, I'd bet they're checking CCs. Right, but what'll you do about not being on the guest list? I reminded Donald of our additional issue. I'll throw a fit, Donald claimed. Cause a scene and hold up the line? These kinds of functions don't like that sort of thing. I might have to repay for my pass, but they'll let me in. Well, I've got $78, so we'll be good for 1 pass, I said. Say, where is K2? Shouldn't he be a part of all this? Oh, Esther said. He's probably working. I'll fill him in. You guys do whatever you need to do to get ready. TM flashed a piece of paper our way. He had finished his first forged document, but it wasn't exactly what we were aiming for. He waved a paper at us with the printed names that were signed on the pass. I commended the little man for making sense of those scribbles, but that wouldn't get us into the auction. Esther gave me a head nod and he was on it, but I stuck around to be sure. Do you know what forge means? Esther asked TM. TM nodded. No. So now we're getting somewhere. Do you know what copy means? TM nodded yes this time. Those 2 words are the same, which is also what I need your papers to be when compared to this original. The same. Can you make 4 copies of this? Esther asked, flashing a real pass. TM nodded. He seemed to get it this time.
Hey there, what's up? LL Smith here. Thank you so much for enjoying my audiobook. I'm going to interrupt you real quick and say, if you get real anxious to hear what happens next and just can't wait till next week, or if you get the urge to just support such a stunning, ruggedly handsome, and awesome independent creator such as myself, I encourage you highly to go follow the link in the description and support the official release. Thank you so much for listening, and let's jump right back into that story.
So I left to gather myself. I sat on the bed in my room, psyching myself up for what was about to happen. We were going to break into the auction. I had to veer away from the crowd and change into some rags that looked more like what the slaves were dressed in. From there, I had to wait for my cue. Once everyone was distracted, I needed to sneak onto the slave wagon and ride my way up to the manor. It was easy enough in words, putting it into practice is what really mattered. Of course I was worried. I worried most about seeing Kyle. Seeing him bagged up and chained from afar had caused enough trauma. Being that close and not doing anything would be like sitting in front of Sunday's dinner without permission to gorge. This was a solid plan, and I needed to follow it, but my mind tended to form its own plan in the heat of the stress. If I screwed this up, Kyle wouldn't be the only one I'd be letting down. I'd acquired so many allies, so many friends, and so many resources. They'd all already drove an illegal activity to help me and Kyle, and why? Kyle's own words rang through my ears, to be a source of positive change. I thought that was just some kind of sappy shit that Kyle said. Could other people believe that as a guiding principle? I could believe it about Esther. Had Kyle's positive change affected Donald and Tim so much that it motivated them to put up with me just to get him back? I certainly haven't been the subject of any positive change, ever. Nor had I been any saint to put up with this whole journey. TJ came into my room and joined me at bedside. "We're getting ready to head out. Are you doing okay?" he asked. "As okay as a fox with his leg in a trap," I exclaimed. "I'm afraid I only half follow that analogy," TJ responded. "The fox only has one leg caught. Given the right sacrifice, he could be free." That's only applicable to a fox that doesn't have a pack," TJ answered. "Your pack is right on your heels and will help you free your trapped leg. Sure, it'll be injured, but it'll still be whole." I looked at TJ. I hadn't been expecting that sort of wisdom. Greenleaf must really open one's mind like they all claim. "Thanks," I said, rising from the bed. I snatched my backpack from the bed. It's where I'd stored my disguise. I took one glance over the end table where Betty sat. I felt through my brown hair. My head was naked without Betty's white brim resting against it. TJ and I left the room and joined the others at the bar. K2 and Esther manned the bar while Donald and TM sat at the bar. "This is it, guys," Esther addressed. "I've caught Kyle up to speed and TM's got our perfect copies made." Esther gave TM a high five and passed out the passes. "Remember, this auction is hosted by Killville's elite, and they won't take kindly to any riffraff. Make sure your distraction ends as swiftly as it began. Going too far with it could prove dangerous," Esther warned. "All right, posse up," I called out to my crew, and they huddled around me. "We're going to get in there and get Kyle back. His suffering ends today." The huddle closed in around me, forming a makeshift group hug, not exactly what I wanted or expected, but I was happy to accept. The five of us left the bar, plans in mind and a mission in the forefront. The private auction was being held on McDougal's Manor. As soon as we left the bar, we could see the line of people entering the auction. For a private auction, a large portion of the public seemed to participate. We walked alongside the crowds, trying to blend in. Blending was impossible with this crowd. Every individual was dressed fancier than newlyweds. Some people even found the time to knock their clothes free of dust. I didn't see a single outfit with that familiar dusty tint. People around here found a way to be rid of that. As we approached the manor, we could see the 8 lines that had formed before the gates. The gates were heavily guarded, and the check-in process seemed extensive. We picked a line and stuck with it. TM, TJ, K2, and I were all crowded up into one group, while we let Donald lag behind, since he'd have to enter separately. We inched closer and closer, and my heart beat like a hand on a drum. These guards knew how to keep the line moving. We rarely came to a full stop. This was it. We were a couple steps away from Kyle's freedom. Of course, I realized it wasn't that simple, but it was that simple in my head. "Your pass and name?" the guard asked. I flashed my phony pass. "Athena party of 4, I said without eye contact, trying to seem as routine as possible. The guard looked down at TM. "Children aren't allowed in the auction unless they're part of your auctionable contraband." "Auctionable contraband?" I feigned offense. "Would you like to be the one to tell Athena that her grandson can't partake in the auction?" "I didn't realize that was the Great Master." The guard backed off. I thought he was older is all. Please, go on through." The guard ushered us through, and I had to resist the deepest of exhales. "Well played," K2 whispered. "That was all luck," I responded. "Now let's just hope that they let Donald in." End of Chapter 9.